Hi everyone, welcome. This is Lab 8 on nutrition. My name is Professor Willis and I am your professor for Biology 103. Let's go ahead and get started talking about what is expected in this nutrition lab. In all the food products that we eat, there are three large macromolecules that can be found in the food. And those three macromolecules are the carbohydrates, the lipids, and the proteins. Now, each of them look a little bit different from the next, and they also have a different function. So we're going to go through some of the basic structure items of each of these, and then talk about what is their function in the human body. Our first macromolecule that we're going to talk about are the carbohydrates. Now, carbohydrates serve as an energy source for your body, specifically usually a shorter term energy source. So if you need energy relatively soon, then you will tend to eat carbohydrates in order to get that energy. They're made up of three elements, which are carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. And usually when you eat them, there's two different types of carbs. You have your simple carbs, which are the simple sugars, and you have the more complex ones. Now, the simple sugars are found in things that are quite sugary, things like candy and things like that. Long chains of sugar molecules, we call those the complex carbs or the starches. And the starches can be found in items like pasta and bread and rice, and they tend to provide a little bit more energy, but it's for the longer term, but not as long as our next macromolecule. Our next macromolecule is called the lipids or the fats. And these are used in production of certain body parts. So for example, your brain does need lipids to perform. All cells have a cell membrane that are composed of lipids. So it's really important that you are intaking lipids for your body. However, of course, we know that you get in trouble when you intake too many lipids because they are stored in the body and they are there for long-term storage of energy. Lipids are also made of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, and they tend to be found in dairy products and sweets and probably a lot of stuff that we shouldn't be eating. The third macromolecule that we'll be talking about are the proteins. Now, proteins are created in the body, and you probably remember from our last lab, you take a section of DNA, you code it into mRNA, and then you code it into a protein. So proteins are super important for the instructions of our cells. They also are important for muscle development and immune response and other such various activities in the body. They are the only macromolecule here that we're talking about that contain nitrogen. So carbs and lipids, they have carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, but the proteins have those and nitrogen as well. When our body consumes food products, we tend to break them apart. And the reason we digest them is so that we can get the energy that is being held in these food products to be released so that we can use them in our body. So the things that are holding the macromolecules together are bonds. And so what our digestive system will do is break apart those bonds so that the energy is released. Now, there's a couple of different ways this is measured in food products. Number one, it's usually in calories. So if you look on the back of a label, you'll see calories and it'll tell you how many it has in that item. Now, obviously, the more calories that you have, the more energy you're going to get from eating that product. And just a little side note here on food labels, those are actually kilocalories, not just regular calories, but they don't put the K-I-L-O on there, just so you know. Also in chemistry, you might have used joules. So if you were measuring energy in a chemistry lab, you might have used joules. There's also things like British thermal units that document energy. So all of these are tools that are used to measure how much energy is released in an item. In your lab for this week, you are going to observe how food items are tested to see if those macromolecules are present. So you're going to be watching an online video lab, and your goal is to try to figure out what macromolecules can be found in some very common food items. Some of those items that will be tested are vegetable oil, milk, apple juice, and I believe they're going to use water as the control. The video is found at this web link right here, but don't worry, the link is also provided in the guide, in the online lab guide. And basically what you do is you watch the video and you answer the questions as he works through the lab. The video is coming from Wilmington University, and it's called Lab Simulation Biological Macromolecules. So if for any reason that you can't get the link to work, go ahead and just do a basic Google search and you'll find the video online. Now, to help you out, I'm going to go through the 3 tests that he uses in the lab. The first test is called the Carb Starch test, and the indicator solution that he uses is iodine or potassium iodide. Now, normally iodine is this yellowish brownish color that you can see here on the right. However, when you place iodine in an item that contains that carbohydrate starch, it will turn a bluish black color. So if you see that happen in the lab, that means it was a positive test for complex carbs. The second test that he does is a protein test, and the indicator that he uses for the protein test is Bure's reagent. And normally, like you see in the picture here on the right, a normal test where there's no protein present, you would see a very light blue color. However, if you place Bure's reagent in a material that has a lot of protein, it's going to turn this really pretty purple color. So again, use that when you're noticing those common food items that he's testing. See if it has a positive or a negative test. And the last test is probably the easiest. It's the lipid test. And so for the lipid test, he takes those food items and he places them on a brown paper bag. Now, when you do that, of course, at first those liquids are going to be wet, and then he waits until they're dry. And if there are lipids present, what will happen on that brown paper bag is that it will turn into this kind of greasy, translucent mess there. You've probably already seen this when you've gone to fast food restaurants and you leave the fries in the bottom of the bag and then you lift them out and you notice the bag kind of looks like this, what you see here in the picture. So if you see that on the paper bag, that means that item had lipids. So lastly, what do you need to do? Well, grab that online lab PDF or doc in our content file on Blackboard and go ahead, watch the video, answer the questions as you go along. Make sure you are using complete sentences, and then please submit that to Blackboard by next week. All right, everyone, good luck, and I will see you next Monday.